Friend of mine I hadn't spoken to for many years. We grew up together, and he always used to tell me that he didn't believe in God. We always argued about it. He didn't believe that I had any rational cranial activity if I believed in God. Matter of fact, the last phone call we had before that, he was saying to me, I remember we were arguing about, he says, science says that everything started with water. And I said, did you read Genesis? How long it takes science to catch up? And he hung the phone up. It's the last phone call we had maybe 20 years ago. But he called this week, and he said, things have been going well for me over the little while, thank God. And I had the phone to my ear, and I'm trying to see if there's a bad connection, because he just said, thank God. He went on to tell me how his life had changed and how thankful he was to God for the things that happened over the last 20 years. Today, we're here to raise the thought of Thanksgiving. This is a Thanksgiving weekend as far as the calendar says, but we should be giving thanks on a daily basis. You know, when I think I was in high school, maybe when we used to, no, before that, we used to visit relatives when we were very small. And we had to wear, I don't know if you would remember this or if it was your experience, but we always got dressed to go see relatives. And the one thing I hated about it was what they put us in. Anybody ever had original wool pants from the 60s? That you couldn't stop itching, but you had to stop because your father told you don't stop itching and give something to itch for? We had to go visit people dressed up in such a way that you're always scratching your legs. And they would show you photographs to the albums of this ancestor, and they never looked happy. Do you remember that? They're always serious, and you wonder what was life like that every photo of these people looks like they're just gone through a rough time. Did they have nothing to give thanks for? Were they ever happy? You know, there's always the photograph, and there's never a smile, there's always a frown. But you know, despite all those stern faces and how life has progressed, we have to give God thanks for so many things. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we are here in your house this morning to praise your name, to give thanks for the many blessings that have come our way, not just today, but on every day of the year. As we open your words, Lord, help us to find a reason to give thanks, and a confirmation that you're listening to us, and a confirmation it's the right thing to do. And help us also to impress on others the necessity and the need for giving thanks. This we pray in Jesus' wonderful name. Amen. This morning I was sharing with Sister Bree that on my computer I saw a terrorist message. I was typing out or printing off my sermon and it says, Windows is not responding. I was terrified because whatever I was going to present today would not happen if that didn't go away. But I want to hope that everybody, and wish everybody a good Thanksgiving this morning, a happy Thanksgiving. This is the day that we have the ability to sit together and remember how God has taken care of us. This is the day we set aside for doing that, for saying, God, you have been so good, we're taking an extra day to give thanks. Now the thing is, what's Thanksgiving all about? If we go back historically, remind us that the Europeans came to North America and they were afraid they wouldn't be able to survive. They came across and saw what winter was like, Canadian style, and thought they'd never make it. But the First Nations people who were here says, let us help you to survive the winters. They were hospitable. And they shared with them the means of survival. And for that, they got together and gave thanks. That's what it started from in North America. But we sit down now and we say, let's widen the picture. Let's give God thanks for everything that has happened throughout the time we've been alive. Now, our friends south of the border, they have, for them, it's one of the big holidays. Big holidays. And they sit around the table with family and friends, and their hearts are overflowing with the things that God has given them, the thankfulness. But here's what happens the next day. Early in the morning, before the sun rises, they're at the shopping mall for bargains. Because truly they're not content with what they have. Why do they give thanks? Is it just a routine? Before the sun rises, one writer wrote, says, they drive like maniacs to get a discount on sales, fighting the same people they sat with tooth and nail to get their hands on that 60-inch plasma that's at half price, or that sweater that they saw in a magazine. It's amazing how quickly thankfulness changes to greed. You see, the next day is called Black Friday. Think about it. This is the day when the enemy tries to reverse the effect of Thanksgiving by instituting greed and want. The enemy knows that having us give thanks to God is not what he'd like us to do. And he plans to divert our interest to something else. The enemy of souls doesn't want us to know that we're blessed. He wants us to think that we need more. We're short of something. We're in want. So we have to hit the mall before anybody else. Here is the thing. What we need to know is that everything comes from him who gives us life to breathe. So we need to be thankful on a daily basis when we rise in the morning and we look outside and we see the sunshine. He says, for his mercy endureth forever. We need to be thankful. A writer, Charles Dickens, wrote that we should be thankful on 364 days and only leave one day to complain, because God is so good. He said we should have just one day for griping and complaining, because everything that we get on a daily basis comes without question, without request, without cause. God provides for us. You know, thankfulness is something that we don't put enough weight on. A little boy was actually, a few little boys were actually getting candy, or it's cookies. Lady giving them out was giving these as tasters, testers. They hand them out in the mall or wherever it was. And each kid came along and they'd get a candy. One kid says, thank you, or cookie. Thank you for the cookie. And she said that you're the first kid or boy or child who's come up and said thank you. Take one of the bags of cookies. The effect of gratitude is something that sometimes cannot be measured. Saying thank you is so important. The Bible is clear with everything we read that every day should be a day of thanksgiving. Not just the one day when we sit around and decide to eat, talk, and then shortly thereafter forget why we actually got together. In Romans, Paul writes, Romans 1:18, he says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and all unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. And he goes on to say, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts became darkened. When we fail to give thanks to God, Paul says our heart becomes darkened because we decide or we feel or we believe that we are short of things that we need to survive. We believe that we need to when we just look at Apple, for example, great product, you may say. But they rely on the fact that we want the new one. Not that the old one doesn't work. We want the new one. Why? It has something else extra. When I was thinking about this, when they sell, for example, a new car, this one's got more USB ports, right? Does it get you where you're going to go any faster? Why do we take one in and then want an extra one that has something extra we're going to pay more for? Because we have this thing that we want, not need. And because of that, we fail to be thankful because we are never satisfied or content. It says that when we're not thankful, he says that Paul says God gave them up to their uncleanliness, the lusts of their heart, the wants, the dishonors, to dishonor their body, who exchanged God's truth for a lie, who worshiped and served the creature and not the Creator. Just as the Apostle Paul wrote that, you could understand that he knew that the people needed to have with God a relationship. When you relate to God, you are not driven by the things that are materialistic. Because today we see something as important, and tomorrow that same thing has no value. How quickly it happens. I remember when I was young, we would buy things that would last. Anybody remember that? We would buy, my father would say, we won't buy that new furniture. We want stuff made out of wood. It'll be around for a long time. Not that stuff that bends or that plastic or that. You remember those days? Now nothing we have lasts any time. I remember when somebody made the comment that there was a time when if your car hit a house, the car was totaled. Now if your car hits a house, they're both totaled. Nothing lasts anymore. So what's the investment in these things that we seek? What do we expect? The Bible says that we have a mansion someplace waiting for us. Why then are we so focused on the here and now? Why are we not satisfied? Why can't we be content? Because our heart does not have gratitude and thanksgiving. When we go outside, I remember, it was many years ago that I went Pathfinder camping, and I was not used to camping. I'll admit that. When I left Toronto and came out here and we decided to go Pathfinder camping, I said, where? It says outside. I says, when? It says overnight. I says, why? And he says, well, that's because the way camping is all about. And I said, where's the nearest hotel? But what happened, I remember this, it was just north of here, just not too far away. And while the young Pathfinders were sleeping, we were still outside, and we looked up, and you know what we saw? Stars. So many of them. There didn't seem to be that many were living in the city. I didn't see that many. I remember the first time we came out here, and this is many years ago, because Brother Rod Durrell was young. He was here that first year, and he was a Pathfinder. And I'm saying to why are we out? And we looked up. And you tell yourself, this is amazing. Furthermore, I thought that was a lot of stars. Have you ever been to Saskatchewan? In the country where there's no lights? You think that they're connected like light bulbs. Fearfully and wonderfully made. To that Creator, we need to give thanks. He's done that for us. The beauty He's provided for us in what we see. We ought to be happy people. We shouldn't be like the pictures on the wall with those long faces look like we've just been beaten with many stripes. God gave us an unbelievably beautiful planet. He gave us creatures to share it with. How then can we say there is no God? When you look at a sunset, and I've tried, sunsets are another thing. When I travel to different places, you realize sunsets at different speeds. I remember the first time, I think I was in a little place called Curacao, and I thought, that's a beautiful sunset. Let me get my camera. I went back to the hotel to get my camera, and came out, it was gone. Disappeared, because the sun sets so quickly when you're in a tropical area, not like the further north. But it was a picture I could never truly capture. No artist could sit down and paint that picture. Only God could make that picture possible. He's given that to us for our enjoyment, our pleasure, our ability to see what is so beautiful about what He's done and say, you know what? We need to give thanks. We need to give thanks. Have you ever stopped and looked at even plants and wonder how they're made? How could they be formed in that way? How is it that when you plant something in the garden, it grows the way you expect? Who set the pattern? Why, who gives the yield to what we have done? And I'll give you a little idea. If you go to somebody's backyard and they're growing things, don't taste them if you don't know what it is. I thought it was a green pepper. It wasn't. Here's the thing. God expresses His love by giving us these wonderful things to look at, an atmosphere to exist in, despite the fact this world is full with sin. If you look at some of the pictures taken around the world, you wonder, how did God provide such a scenery? You know, He says that the heavens declare what? The glory of God, day by day. It says in Psalms 19, what? The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth His handiworks. Day unto day utter speech. Night unto night shows what? Knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone throughout the earth, and in their words to the end of the world. And in them He has set the sun for a tabernacle. Look at that. Anywhere in the world their voice is heard. It doesn't matter what language you speak. When you look at what God has done, the word amazing has to come into your mind. Amazing. You know, we look at the world we live in and we sometimes get worried and distressed. We read about nuclear arms buildup in North Korea. We read about hurricanes in the news. We read about earthquakes. We know about our neighbors to the south and how unsettling that is. We know that we deal with other countries that will have an effect on us, particularly the economics of Brexit. We deal with internal problems like residential schools, social inequities, and we have more and different diseases and disasters every year. Environmental, animals dying without reason. We see whales washing up and we don't know why. They should be in the sea. Unexplained mass shootings. And I pause for a moment. Unexplained. Because there is an explanation. This country, south of us, has 89 guns for every 100 people. And every year, approximately 35,000 people lose their lives by that method. Yet we know something. Matthew writes that these are the signs of the end of the age. These remind us that Christ is coming soon. These remind us of the promise made when He left. Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me. We forget about the beauty sometimes. But let's not forget about the promise. You know, David wrote in the Psalms, when I consider your heavens, the works of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you've set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him? Why do you care about us? Why are we important? It says that we're made a little lower than the angels, but crowned with glory and honor. You may not have considered it at all, but the Sabbath itself is a day of thanksgiving and a thing of beauty. It's a time that we are relieved from everything else in the world. No matter how pressing the week is, I tell you, when I see 3 p.m. on Friday, I start turning things off. Sabbath's coming, and I want a reason not to work. So when people call and say it's an emergency, as well, it won't be till Monday an emergency, or maybe even Sunday. But Sabbath's coming, what a relief it is. What a joy divine. What a pleasure that God says, on that day, meet with me and we'll talk about the things we have discussed throughout the week. The things you've prayed about, let's talk about them again. Let's be reminded why we're here. Let us know this time together as a time designated by God. This is a time we stop to smell the rose and to praise His name. This is a time we thank the Creator for everything that's been given to us. And we identify Him as the Creator, acknowledge His goodness, and sing some of the songs we sung today. And the songs sometimes just touch our hearts because we know how good God has been. You know, when it comes to seeing God's goodness and His mercy and His graciousness, we should be naturally and involuntarily thankful. It shouldn't have to be forced. He says, you know what? I've given you all these things to help you to survive, because when I come back, I will make all things new. That's the promise. You know, in Philippians, Paul says, I have learned to be content no matter the circumstances. Here's what he said. I know what it is to be in need. There are times when I have nothing. That's what Paul's saying. Times when I'm broke and I don't know where the next meal is coming from. But he says there are times when I have plenty, where I can eat and have leftovers. Despite both situations, he says, you know what? I can give God thanks for everything because He gives me strength. In North America, we live in a world industrialized. We have plenty of money as a society. We have material possessions as a society. But 63% of us will openly say we're not content. We're missing something in this part of the world. Some people believe that their lack of contentment gives them reason to hold back gifts to God because God should be doing better. They think, and you know, they want to make an arrangement with God. They want to say, you know, Lord, if you give me more, then I'll be able to give you some. God said to Job, where were you when I hung the stars? What right do you have to make that deal or even make that suggestion? God's given you everything from birth to present. Thankfulness is what's in order. We complain in our society that we don't have money, and we forget those in our community who don't have food. We don't think about those around the world who don't have a roof over their heads because of a hurricane, or clothes on their backs because they don't have any, or shoes on their feet, or sleep on a pile of rags or a mound of straw, or not eat for an entire day while we choose what to have for a snack. We don't consider how many mothers around the world have watched their children die in their arms from hunger. And we sit sometimes with our want for the things that are around us, our trips to the mall, but in our hearts we're showing nothing but ingratitude. When do we acknowledge his blessings? That's the question. Because we clearly have them. We have a problem sometimes we don't have the best of everything. It's a competition. We don't appreciate that what we have. The advice is not to let Satan allure you into this or trap you into this feeling of discontent. You know, Lucifer was in heaven and he had discontent. And we know how that turned out. He wanted to be above his creator. Could not be content with everything we read about him in Ezekiel. One of the best dressed of the angels. He had everything. But when you want more and cannot be content with the blessings you have, it's a dangerous place to be. Hebrews 13:5 says, keep your lives free from the love of money. And be content with what you have, because God says, I will never leave you alone or forsake you. Look at North America. If you work for a company as a CEO, and your company shows $5 million profit this year, and next year you show another $5 million, your job's in trouble. Do you know why? You have to beat last year's amount. Not happy. Paul warns and speaks through Timothy, says, people who want to get rich fall into temptation and into traps and into foolishness and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin, whether it's be physical or financial. The love of money, we know, is the root of evil. For people have, in chasing money, squandered away what they actually have, wandered from the faith, pierced themselves with grief. And you know what greed does? It kills gratitude. Satan used that as a very mighty weapon to change the hearts of men. Deuteronomy 8 says, when you have eaten your full, like we have in North America, we have food as a nation, as a country, then you should bless the Lord for the good land he's given you. Beware in the same time not to forget to keep the commandments, his judgments and statutes, which are holy, lest you are eaten and full and live in beautiful homes, have your flock, tend your sheep, have your gold, have your silver that have been multiplied. And when your heart is lifted up, you forget about God, who led you through great and terrible wilderness, through fiery serpents and scorpions, through thirsty days when there was no water, who brought you out of a place of pure rock, who fed you in the wilderness, and your fathers. But instead be humble, that he might test you, that you are good to the end. Remember your Lord and your God, he says in verse 18, who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant in you, and swore to your fathers as he is today. Speaking of blessings in our lives, we tend to take it for granted sometimes about the things God's given us, about the people placed in our lives. You know, there's people who have encouraged you many times, who you can turn and talk to and says, I have a problem or have an issue. Can I talk to you? Can I share with you? People who have support. You know what? Sometimes people have said, my spouse worked and I went to school, supported you. Thank God for that opportunity. Sometimes we only thank God for people once the people are no longer with us. Then we find the reasons that we should have expressed when they were here. You see, beside the gift of salvation, God's great gift to us is our family and friends, including, if I might add, the church family. And one of the things, people have said to me is, it's so good to belong to this church family. Someone listens to me when I talk. I can go to someone and ask a question. I feel included. I feel a part of something. I feel blessed. We must be thankful for these things. It says in Thessalonians, we should pray continually and give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God for you. Not only for what we have been given materially, but for things that have been given to us to affect our lives and blessings relating to people among us. You know, there was a letter written by a young lady. I'm watching the time, and I'm sure you're watching it too. But let me share this with you. A young lady went off to university away from home. And at the end of the first term, she wrote a letter back to her mother. The letter goes as follows. Dear Mom, I am sorry I haven't written sooner. My right arm has been broken. I broke it when I broke my leg. I jumped off the second floor of my dorm the night of the fire, and we were actually lucky. The young service station attendant saw the blaze and called the fire department. They were there in a matter of minutes. I was in hospital for a few days, but Paul, the service attendant, came to see me every day. And because it was taking so long to get our dorm livable again, I moved in with him. He has been so nice to me. I'm excited to tell you you're going to be a grandmother because I'm pregnant. Paul and I plan to get married just as soon as he can get a divorce. I hope things are fine at home. I'm doing well here, and I will write when I get a chance to write again, your daughter Wendy. At the bottom she wrote, P.S. None of the above is true, but I want to tell you I am failing chemistry and I've got a C in sociology, just so you can have this in perspective. Talk about a thankful mother for that last paragraph. Sometimes we need to put life in perspective, because it's unfortunate for us sometimes when we forget that God's been good to us all along. You may remember May 13th, I certainly do. That was the day that I almost was not here again. And every day I thank God that it went the way it did, that my life was spared. Perspective. Every day is a day of thankfulness, because every day the sun rises. You know, as my friend I was talking on the phone, he says, nothing is by a coincidence. God works in our lives to give us the experience that we need to have to show Him gratitude. We ought to cultivate in our hearts thankfulness. It's essential to see life from the proper perspective. Paul says we should give thanks in all circumstances. The only way we can do it to see, especially in the struggles of life, that some days will not be good, but some days will be good. Paul says in Romans 18, consider that our present sufferings are nothing compared to the glory God will give to us. Now keep in mind who Paul was. This was a man who had been beaten multiple times, betrayed by his friends, stoned and left for dead, shipwrecked, bitten by venomous snakes, imprisoned, attacked by a mob, blinded by the light, and suffered what he called just a thorn in the flesh. Yet still he found reason to be thankful to God. Let's see what Paul writes in 2 Corinthians. He says, we are hard pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. We're not in despair, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. Therefore we should never lose heart. Though outwardly we may be wasting away, he says that inwardly we're being renewed day by day, thank God. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So let's fix our eyes on what is seen, and not what is seen, but what's not seen. For this is temporary, but what's unseen is eternal. I don't know what kind of struggles we have throughout the week. We all have them. As I say, you know, for me this morning I panicked at the insolence of my computer. You might have something in the week that's gone wrong for you. Perhaps you looked at your phone and you got a ticket for $500 while you're driving. All these things. I don't know what has made your week not good. But we all have things that will make us wonder, and sometimes, Lord, are you with me? But we're being reminded that he's with us all the time. You know, no problem we have is too big for our God. No circumstance cannot be overcome through his mercy. Paul says we need to be thankful. The psalmist was right. He says it's a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord. Count your blessings. Show God by your actions how thankful you are that he has worked in your life, and you give generously to those who do not have. If you are blessed with good health, be compassionate to those who don't have good health. If you're overjoyed with your saving relationship with God, share that with someone else. Introduce someone to God who hasn't yet known him as well as you do. The best way to give thanks to God is to be a blessing to others. In Philippians 4:6, it says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, it says, whatever things are true and noble, whatever is right and pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on these things. As I look at us here today, I might even go as far as saying some of us would agree we're unbelievably blessed. I am convinced I am, especially after May 13th. We all have different problems and issues, but we all have a common blessing in the love of Jesus Christ, a common promise. And because of that, we should let the peace of God rule in our hearts, because we're called to one body, as it says in Colossians, to be thankful, and to let the word of Christ dwell richly in us, to give us wisdom and teaching and admonition, that we could sing psalms and hymns and praises to God from our heart. Everything in our life experience, God has seen our sufferings, he's seen our overcomings, he's seen our joy, he's seen our grief, and he's also blessed us along the way. We have this one day that we've set aside on the calendar that we say it's Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. And most people miss the whole idea of giving thanks. And they focus on the celebration and not the reason. But today I urge us to remember gratitude to God, thankfulness for his mercy, because his mercy endureth forever. As we leave here today, I ask that these words remain in your heart. Remain in your heart. That God is to be praised, to be worshipped, because his mercy endureth forever, and he is the only person, being worthy of worship and deserves our gratitude and thanks. Let us go forward every day singing his praises and singing gratitude in our hearts. God bless you. Amen. And I'm grateful I can hit print.
Amen. Yes. Please stand. We'll use to close our service today.